G'day folks, welcome to the Amphibious invasion module from Atlantic War. I'm going to start running through this. This will be quite a large file because I've done a lot on this module. There's a lot more to go, but let me run you through what I'm doing. And again, huge shout out to Steve from LBW Strategy Gaming and Paul at Monster on My Table. Check out his, I'll link in the description below, a tutorial on how to do the German fire phase, which I'll talk about in a moment. So to start, this module has sort of 2 pages of context. It explains a lot of what you can see here. The different rows, the different segments, before you then get into the sequence of play. It is much more difficult than, much more complex than the airborne invasion sequence of play. Some steps are very, very easy, a simple die roll. Others are much more complicated with more calculations involved. But I'll run you through not everything in detail. Check out LBW Strategy Gaming for those details, or Monster on My Table for those sort of tutorials. I'm just going to summarize how this went for me. We start with the Pont de Hoc landing. So basically we place our invasion force here, we roll a die, and on a 1 to a 9, the guns aren't there. Okay, I rolled a 0, which means that the guns are actually there. And what this basically means is that the strong point remains on its stronger side, and they must now assault that strong point in the upcoming Allied movement phase. Okay, now we get to the Utah beach drift segment. Now, every beach experiences some sort of drift. It's random for every unit that lands, but for Utah, it's a simple die roll. If the result is 8 to 9, there is no drift. They land as planned. I rolled a 3, so we go to the actual historical landings. Now, that is basically these over here, Uncle Red, Tar Green. Yeah. All right, so that's where they actually go. And with that done, we don't have to roll for any other drift on Utah beaches. They basically land in those beaches. We now go to the DD tank segment. Now, this is where I basically take the DD tanks from along the top here, and I can choose to swim them to the beaches. At first I thought, well, I don't really want to do this because a lot of them sank, particularly off Utah Beach. I think historically only 2 land, I could be wrong there, but very small number landed. So I was thinking, well, I don't want to send any. And then I realized that at Utah Beach we have to send the 741st Tank Battalion. These guys have to be sent. They have to swim, and they have a very low chance of success. I think it's a 1 in 10 chance per unit. Okay. Elsewhere, I can choose to hold them back for the second wave or send them forward, but there are very beneficial die roll modifiers. And all right, so that's Omaha setting them up. Okay. Initially, I think, yep, you have to send at least 1 to every other beach, so 1 on Utah, 1 on the British beaches, but then I realised with this beneficial modifier, there's a very good chance of success. Okay, so, yeah, then I realised Utah has a -8, so I send all the other tanks in, and only 1 sinks, so pretty happy with how that worked out. This is, Omaha Beach. 2 managed to survive, which is pretty decent considering the odds. You'd expect none or 1 to survive, but yeah, I've got 2 out of there, so that's beating the odds. And then over on the British beaches, you can see I've placed all their DD tanks as well. Here they go, and a decent survival rate. A little bit disappointing there. And then we do shifts as well. So the beaches, yeah, so they land, and then we do tank drift checks. And any tank that drifts off the edge of a beach is destroyed. Initially, so there is a chart that we use for this. And if a tank, so the Omaha beach has a lot of drift, the British beaches have very little drift, and I was incorrectly applying the Omaha die roll to the British beaches before I corrected it and fixed it all up. So some of these eliminated and they come back from the dead, and there's very little drift. Most of them are just landing where they should, and they go straight to the shingle beach, these DD tanks. All right, so straight up to the shingle, they skip the beach box. Okay, now we get to the landing segment. There's a lot going on here. As you can see, I'm kind of skipping through a lot of it very quickly, just to kind of summarize what happened. But basically, the British beaches were pretty good. I lost 4 DD tanks across these beaches. Sword was pretty disappointing, but otherwise, a decent spread of DD tanks along the beaches. All right, landing segment. And I'm probably on, here we go. And this is basically taking these waves and dragging them straight down into their designated beach areas. And this is basically the staging area. This is where they're getting ready to cross that ocean towards the beaches. So a lot going on through here. You can see I'm just dragging a lot of these units down, trying to sort them out with placement. Okay, with that done, we have beach obstacle clearance, and this is where we're drawing on, there's a couple of factors here. The tide plays a role. The US beaches start at low tide. In a moment you'll see I'll grab a US beach marker, but basically we only have to roll at low tide. We only roll for armor and vehicle units to check for an obstacle casualty, and it's only on a roll of 0. Okay, so basically I'm rolling across these beaches, hoping not to roll a 0. I'll shrink this down and we'll run through it. All safe on Utah, all safe on Omaha. For the British beaches, British beaches now are at mid-tide, and it's a little bit different here. We do have to roll. There is a I think it was a +1 modifier to their roll. Beach drift, tank survival, obstacle, medium tide, +1 die. All units check, and they apply +1 dice modifier. So I did forget their +1 die roll modifier at times. Here as I go looking for something to use as the the US tide marker. I don't know why it's not included in the module, but it's not. I couldn't find it anywhere in the unit list. But anyway, okay, so all units check with a +1 dice roll modifier. I'm going to check this as I go through, because as I said, I forgot it occasionally, so I'll check. It might be hard because I've done a lot since then, but Gold Beach. And we've got to reveal these numbers in the bottom left as well. I pointed at the screen. Okay, the levels are 5, 4, 4, 4, 4, and 5. And this basically corresponds to a level on the obstacle casualty table. The higher the number, the more likely we are to suffer a step loss or a pinned result. All right, so I'll fly through these very quickly. Low numbers are bad. So we start with 3 1s, which is a +1 gives me 3 pinned results. So I did that correctly. Okay, that's good. Without the +1 at high tide, they would be step losses. Okay, high numbers are all fine. Armor is all pinned. Infantry safe. Okay, now I accidentally do a step loss here on King Green. That should be a casualty instead, but I think I'll come back and catch it. So I'll flick through all this, but basically there's a lot of these die rolls just for casualties. I'm not making any decisions here. This is just rolling for every unit to see if they're a step loss or pinned. Okay, and I go through all of these. This is where I make some corrections down to Salt Beach and a scattering of pinned units. So you got to roll this for every unit. Then we get to the drift determination phase, and this is starting at the beach, starting at the what's it called? The beach area, the C box. We see how they drift to south, up towards the beach hex. And again, this is a lot of die rolling on the beach drift table, and all the beaches are different. Okay, so I think I started at Utah. No, Utah is done. I think I started to do Utah, then realised that's already been done. So I go to Omaha and basically units drifting, usually one box left or one box right. Any units that do drift off the edge at this stage come back next turn. Okay, so they're not permanently lost, but there was only, I think, one of those. So only, I think, one unit drifted off the beach. Okay, so you can see, look, most of these units are, particularly in the British beaches, where there's minimal drift, most of the units are going straight ahead. There's not a lot of drift on these British beaches. Omaha, left and right, but didn't really make too much of a difference overall. Okay, then we get to a doozy. The German fire segment, and I did a short video on this not long ago demonstrating how this works. Also check out Monster on My Table tutorial. This is Paul's video on how to go through this section. Basically, you have to work out the volume of German fire coming into each of these individual boxes. I've been using my paper charts, but I'm sure they're summarized here. Invasion module charts, invasion, yeah, so they're all here. So these are all the charts you're using. Basically, you work out the fire value. And this is the total number of points firing on a box. So for this box, for example, there's only one Widerstand nest firing on it, and it is not doubled because there are units in front of it. So it would just have a strength of 1, right? So this first one that I do, ignore my comments. Uncle Red, fire strength 1, fire value 1, and I roll a 0, which is great for start for the Germans. This means that they use then fire result table C, which is this section here. There we go. We then roll again. Oh, dice roll modifiers. Doesn't change anything. For most of the beach areas, they are -2 dice roll modifiers. On the American beaches, low tide and the first subphase. Then we roll, and of course I rolled a 0. So we look at C, 0. There are modifiers based on the number of armor or weapons units in the box. And then we just add up. So how many armor losses? The first number is losses, the second number is pinned. So where you see, for example, infantry 1P, that means 1 step loss, 2 units are pinned. Engineer, 1 unit pinned, weapon, 1 unit lost. Yeah. Okay, so I'll run through this very quickly, but if you want to go through find more detail about this, as I said, check out the demonstration that I did. This took me a long time to work through. It took me a long time to figure it out. I had to reread the rules. Now again, as I spoke about in my video, here's the rules right here. There's only like 1 column of rules guiding this. All right, so it seems pretty straightforward, but it's kind of all the if this, then that kind of clauses, which kind of just really complicates the process. I got my head around it pretty quickly, and so by the time I got to the British beaches, I was flying through them. Also because the British beach, Omaha is really challenging because there are so many Widerstand nests, and they've got these overlapping sub-sectors, which made it really hard to kind of think about. But by the time I get to the British beaches, which you'll see in a moment, still on Omaha. Okay, I think now I'm on the British beaches, so yeah. And I was flying through here. Basically what you're seeing is a result of that fire, the result of calculations for every box, and then rolling for fire value, and then rolling for fire results, and then implementing those fire results for every box on every beach. And this is pretty much the end of that German fire. So you can see a lot of pinned units, quite a few step losses throughout. I don't know if this is good or bad. this is just this is how it all worked out. It was a really, really long, exhaustive, not very fun process, but it's done. And what I'm going to do is, once I've resolved this whole amphibious invasion, because that's the first German fire segment, there will be German fire segment, Allied movement, German movement, assault, demolition. Once I've done this, I've got to do it again for the PM phase, I think. So, yeah. Then I think I'll save it and just go, right, this is a pretty standard opening. If I ever want to start the campaign again, I can go from that point without having to repeat it all over again. You may be aware I've played the first SPI Atlantic War from 1978, and it's different. There are differences, but it's got a similar feeling of frustration of rolling buckets and buckets of dice with no agency whatsoever. So I have no control. I mentioned in that brief video, dude, the only decision I've made up to this whole process has been how many DD tanks to send in the first wave compared to holding them back. And I decided to send them all. Yeah. Except on Omaha Beach, where I think I held... Oh no, I had to send all of them back. Yep, so I sent everything I possibly could from the other beaches. No, this is 743rd. I held back the 743rd. They've been held back for that second wave. Okay, that's the only decision I've made. Everything else that has happened has been the result of random die rolls, random calculations based on the situation, based on those random die rolls. That's it. I'm just rolling, resolving, resolving. Lots and lots and lots of die rolls with no choices being made. So it's not a lot of fun. It's not even, I mean, with the airborne, you can see where they're going. You actually see these units on the map. You can see what's happening to them. You move them as they try to regroup. So you have control over where these are moving. As your companies are emerging from the fog of war, you're making decisions on where they go. It's really interesting. The invasion module is not, because I've got pinned units everywhere, step losses. Okay, I don't know. Yeah, I just don't know what all of this really means. So then, at the end of this, we get a brief anti-tank fire phase, and they have another devastating wave of attacks. This was really frustrating. So that's the airborne table. This was really frustrating, actually, because after surviving all this, German anti-tank fire was horrific. Look at that, 1109. They caused some more losses among my tanks that had made it through to this point, including one that by this stage, I'm sure there's one that was down to half strength. Might be on the British beaches. Yeah, here it is. It's already suffered 2 losses out there on Sword Beach. So yeah, not a great experience, but I'm through the first part of it now and about to move to the Allied fire, Allied movement segment. Basically, it's taken me a long time and I've done this. So I've got 6 steps left. I'm really hoping these are much faster. Yeah. And I really cannot tell you. As I said, with the airborne, I've had a sense of how things are going and it felt good. With this, I don't know. I just couldn't tell you. I've done so much, but I couldn't tell you if it's good or bad. It seems like there's a lot of pinned units. A lot of pinned units on Juno Beach. Lost some DDs on the Sword, but yeah. Folks, yeah, that's it for now. I will continue with the Amphibious module and report back soon.